Housing in New Mexico Advisory Committee is composed of 19 members currently. The intent is to have them represent the full continuum of housing from homelessness to home ownership. As we all know, there's a huge need for affordable housing out there, and no one entity can do it on its own.
Sustaining and preserving affordable housing is essential. We have a lack of affordable units to begin with. We can't afford to lose any of them, particularly those that have project-based rental assistance. That rental assistance provides that stability for a household that if their income changes, that they're not facing eviction. We're rehabilitating what's in place, but making it more energy efficient, more healthy environment, more safe and secure, just improving the livability.
The most significant challenges in New Mexico for housing are just simply a lack of good, decent housing, especially in our rural communities. And without that, small communities tend to die very quickly because they lack any kind of economic opportunity. The strategies supported by the committee that I think will do the most good are going to be the legislative action that streamlines the ability for small communities to create more housing, that incentivize higher density housing, and that eliminate some of the other barriers towards building housing.
The difficulty is how do we build capacity at the local level? They have so much responsibility and so many other things, and they also know that there's a need for housing, but they can't really have the time to focus on that. So one of the thoughts around the strategies in the MFA Housing Advisory Committee is to be able to look at how we develop a toolkit, right, to be able to build that capacity.
Home ownership is extremely important. The need for our community to be stable and to develop and to increase in value, that's where quality of life comes from. Any new business routinely involves people at every spectrum of jobs. There are lower paying jobs all the way up to executives. And you've got to have appropriate housing for all of those people. And the one that these days probably is shorted too much is workforce housing. So that role needs to be fulfilled by existing housing. So once again, preserving our existing housing, upgrading it, keeping it appropriate for the needs of today is terribly important, because that's the housing that the workers are going to be living in. That whole code compliance process that we are required to go through, they're a serious impediment. One of the things we talk about that we try to get our public officials aware of is that, let's take a restaurant as an example. They have to have an inspection, but you can go on serving food while you wait for the inspector. We can't do that. Largely, we have to stop the process, wait for the electrical inspector to come around, do the inspection, fix whatever's wrong, and then we can get the other crews to come in and move on. Well, in the construction process, we have so many different people that need to come and go from the job site that when you have to stop and you have all these other people lined up waiting to come in, and they have their schedules lined up for when they can come in, and you stop, the whole train crashes behind you while you wait for the inspector.
What I see in my community is that homeownership is the best option. These homes are passed down to children. The family home stays within the family once it's built. The Pueblo of Jemez has been working on the Pueblo Place housing subdivision since 1999. Well over 20 years, and we only have one house built there. What we are lacking is funding, infrastructure, and just support from both local, state, and federal funding agencies. Tribal leadership or governor should be at the table when discussing policy change.
We have seen the rise in homelessness, and it really started 40 years ago, but it's continued mainly, I would say, because of the lack of affordable housing. We just haven't invested in the kind of housing people on lower incomes need, and so then they end up homeless. Related to that is the lack of behavioral health services, mental health services, which we don't put people in institutions as much anymore, but we never created the community solutions that people with mental health issues need to live in the community. So two of the most important strategies for ending homelessness in this are the pre-development funding, which will allow nonprofit developers and other developers to have the money they need to plan and get architectural drawings for the housing that we need. The other really important strategy is to increase funding for the state linkages program. Linkages provide vouchers, housing supports for people who are homeless, experiencing mental illness or other behavioral health issues. and it's just been a very successful program. The strategies we're working on are attainable. What it really takes is a commitment of the funding to actually do it.
If the strategy plan was fully implemented, we would see a major housing growth in all communities throughout the state of New Mexico. It will definitely address our housing shortage here in our tribal community.
State and local communities definitely need to invest in the processes that we're putting together today, because without affordable housing, there is a lack of basic economic stability, and outside investors won't be looking at their communities to invest in if they won't have the housing supply that they need.
It's very important to have this plan for us all to be behind and work from together. So we have a unified voice. We all represent different segments, but it's a continuum, and we can't do one piece without the other. It goes from homelessness to homeownership, and every piece along the way is important.